Okay, so this is the first time we're meeting each other, and I just wanted to sort of talk about one of the things that I really wanted to do with my photography and videography, and that's basically upgrade my landscape lens, which is my wide angle lens. You would have seen this in a lot of my other videos so far. I've only got like 4 but most of them were filled with a vintage 20mm lens, and I've been meaning to get a upgrade to that lens for quite a while. So I'll show you some comparisons and the differences between them with both my photography and my videography. But first of all, I just want to have a bit of a chat about why I'm upgrading and the differences. So originally when I got this camera, which is the Nikon Z6, I ended up needing a wide angle lens, because when I bought it, I only had one lens, which was the 50mm 1.8, which is what I'm filming on right now. It's mind-boggling good, especially for photography. So I really wanted something that would allow me to capture all those landscape images that I wanted, and also to start filming, because I'd like to dip my toes into the whole video side of things. So I decided to get a 20mm AIS f2.8 lens, which was made in the 90s or 80s, I think. It's an F mount lens, so it's the DSLR mount, not the Z mount, so it's not native to this camera. You do have to use an adapter. But it was quite cheap, and the quality was supposedly quite good with some of the reviews, and I had this recommended to me by one of the guys in the camera store. So when I ordered it on eBay, and I think it was $300 at the time Australian, I ended up realizing that there's a few things that I didn't like about this lens as well. So the first one was going to be the focus range. So the focus range on this is so small, between 2 meters and infinity, it's extremely hard to focus on your subject. The other thing about this lens is there's no autofocus, so you have to use manual focus the entire time. So you're always going to be limited by the small range of focus that this lens gives you. But the other problem that I find with this lens is for my purposes, I actually need something that's weather sealed. Obviously climbing mountains and crossing rivers, and when you're camping overnight with a little bag on your back, you don't really have a lot of protection for all your camera gear. So a lot of it's out in the open, which is why I got the Nikon system in the first place. But this lens is actually not weather sealed at all. So I've been paranoid about using it because I don't really want it to rain and then get water inside my camera. The lens I don't care so much about, but if it gets inside the camera, then it can be a big problem, because then I've got to replace the whole system. So that's something to note. And lastly, I kind of find sometimes that the 20mm for what I'm doing just isn't quite wide enough for both video and photography. So I'm finding that sometimes I just need a little bit more width, preferably up to 16mm. This is why the Sony 16-35 G Master lens is so popular. But I'm running the Nikon system and they don't really make anything in that range. So what I did was a little bit of research, and I came across the Nikon 14-30mm f4 lens. So when you use both of these lenses on the camera and you mount them, ergonomically, they're roughly the same size and feel the same weight once they're on the camera, because you still actually have to use the F mount adapter when you're using the 20mm lens, whereas the 14mm goes straight onto the camera, but at the same time it is a slightly larger physical size, but lengthwise they're very similar. The second benefit is that this is actually weather sealed. There's a bunch of reviews online you can watch as well, and it gives me the peace of mind that when I'm trudging through water, as I have done, that I'm not going to be able to splash any water up into the camera and ruin it. So I'm much happier about that. And also this does come with the lens hood, which means if I'm doing any night shoots and the condensation builds, I should have more protection from that. And also I should have a bit of protection from the sun flare as well if the sun comes down directly onto the lens. So another benefit to this lens is the autofocus. And I've tested it so far and it looks so much better. So one of the things you'll actually see as well between these two is that when you compare them like for like in photos or video, you can see a huge color shift where the new 14 to 30 is just so much better. The contrast is better, the colors are better, the sharpness is better. It just really pushes through all of that detail to your eyes. Whereas the 20mm AIS lens just seems to be very flat, it's not as sharp, and the colors really just don't pop enough. The 20mm also seems to have like a yellow filter over the top of it, almost. So it's more warm than the 14 to 30mm. But not necessarily in a good way, because some of the greens just look a bit yellow rather than popping with the green as the color is in real life. And I have to edit out a lot of this sometimes, especially if I'm doing my videos, such as when I was in New Zealand. The other thing that the 14 to 30mm lens is going to hopefully fix is sharpness and actually the brightness of the aperture, which is funny because it's an f4 comparing it to the 20mm 2.8. The problem with the f2.8 is that there is quite a lot of vignetting and it's quite blurry at 2.8 because it is using older technologies from 20 odd years ago. It's not that clear, so you really do have to stop that lens down a bit to try and get anywhere near close to the 14 to 30mm lens. And the vignetting actually darkens the image down, especially in the corners when you're shooting at f2.8. So I would generally stop that down to f4 or 5.6 just to get a clear, bright image. But although there's so many benefits from this 14 to 30mm lens, the 20mm does have that vintage characteristic. So I really don't want to persuade you into just selling off your old gear and just buying everything brand new and just watching all the YouTube videos and all the marketing and just spending all your money. Because I have been filming with this all through New Zealand and Australia so far, and I've also taken this to Korea, and I've got some good shots from Korea as well, which I'll show you here. But overall, I think that it does have character, where a lot of the new lenses are just so sharp and clear, sometimes they don't have that. This is why everyone's going back to film now, film simulations such as Fujifilm, and also collecting all the old Canon and Nikon film cameras so that they can get that feel and the grain and the imperfections of these old cameras and old lenses that create that character. So if this is all you can afford, especially if you're starting, definitely go and try and do this. It was honestly the best thing I did, and it helped me become a better photographer, especially being able to manually focus and just focus on what I'm taking a photo of or what I'm videoing, what I'm filming, rather than actually worrying about the autofocus modes, and there's 17 XAVC files, and you know which file format I have to worry about with this type of filming, and then everything else that comes with all these newer cameras. So yeah, don't rule them out, embrace them, you know, embrace them, love them. But when you can afford it and you need to do things maybe a bit more quickly, such if you're shooting events or portraits and time is of the essence, or if you need to get in and out, if you're doing street photography and you're missing scenes and you need autofocus, then you can spend more money on a newer system and a newer lens such as this. So I hope all that was helpful. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble for ages. So yeah, you can like and subscribe if you want, but otherwise I'll hopefully see your face soon. Cheers.